Hello and welcome to the Innovate Utility CX, formerly CS Week, Customer Assistance Deep Dives webinar, the ins and outs of LIHEAP, Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. I'm Lisa Collins. I'm the Education Director for IUCX, and I am your host today. Just some side notes here. The session is being recorded and available for on demand, and will include a PDF download of the presentation link that you will find in your dashboard panel under handouts. So today we have our guest speakers. I have Elizabeth Paulson joining us as our moderator for the session. She is with JEA. She has over 25 years of nonprofit experience and was hired by JEA roughly 10 years ago as the first ever customer assistance programs manager. She was specifically brought on board to build affordability solutions for the sake of vulnerable customers. So welcome, Elizabeth, and I'm gonna let you take it over to introduce our guest speaker today.
Thanks, Lisa. We are so fortunate to have Katrina Metzler in the audience. Katrina has dedicated her career to community service and advocating for those most in need. She has a wide range of experience in the fields of energy, education, and poverty need and fighting poverty. She has a wide, before her 20-year career, rewind. Before she became the National Energy and Utility Affordability Coalition Executive Director, she was the Energy Services Director for the National Association for the State Community Services Programs. Before she lived in DC, Katrina served as the state of Ohio's section supervisor for the Weatherization Assistance Program, managing one of the largest energy assistance programs, energy efficiency programs in the country, WAP. Ms. Metzler was appointed to the State Energy Advisory Board in 2013 to serve as the Assistant Secretary for Energy, where she provided critical expertise to improve access to services and program delivery. Welcome, Katrina Metzler.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And amazing that I accomplished all of that before I was even 24 years old, right? Thank you for being here with us today. It's exciting to be able to present with our utilities on the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. I'm interested when I go to CS Week, and I know that you all have had a name change. Congratulations on that transition, by the way. But I'm excited when I go to their event every year to talk with utilities who are not familiar with LIHEAP and how it supports the operations at your individual utilities. So today I've tried to put together a presentation in collaboration. Thank you, Elizabeth, for all your help. What do utilities need to know about LIHEAP? How can we deliver the key information that you need to know that affects your day-to-day? So that's what I'm going to try and impart to you today. We're going to leave some time for questions afterwards, and I'm really excited to share this with you. I think that those of you who are unfamiliar with LIHEAP, this is going to be like an epiphany, that there's this assistance, that there's this federal program out there that can support what you do at your utility. So I'm looking forward to seeing those aha moments as we proceed through the presentation.
So Katrina, I have a question for you.
Yes,
what is LIHEAP anyway? What is LIHEAP anyway?
Well, I guess we probably ought to start at the beginning. So on your screen is a picture of a man. Maybe some of you know who this is. Maybe you don't. It's too bad we have chat disabled because it would be really interesting to see the guesses that are going on in people's heads right now. But this is tied to the history of LIHEAP. So my question for you all is, who is this man and what does he have to do with LIHEAP? Next question would be, this car, what is its ties to the federal LIHEAP program? And there is a direct connection between this automobile and the LIHEAP program. So one of my favorite icebreakers I was telling Elizabeth earlier is to ask folks what their first car was, and this looks very much like the first car that I drove. Elizabeth, what was your first car?
I had a green Gremlin, and it looked like it had a hatchback, but it didn't. It was embarrassing.
Did it just not open, or did it just literally not have the hatchback that you expected?
It did not have a hatchback at all. It was the economy model.
Oh, I love it. My first car looked a lot like this. It was a 1979 Mercury Bobcat. It was orange, and we nicknamed it the Bob Kitten in high school when I would drive it to school every day. Looked a lot like this. What do all of these things have to do with LIHEAP? Well, um, LIHEAP was founded by Ronald Reagan, and that was a picture from his days as an actor, that first shot of him in the cowboy hat. He was an actor before he became president of the United States. I always have to remind myself that there are probably people listening to this right now who were not yet born in 1981 and may not know who Ronald Reagan is. He was the president that initiated the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which has actually been a real benefit from an advocacy perspective to us, because an assistance program is often something that you don't perceive Republicans as being supportive of. However, since this program was created by one of their heroes on the Republican side of the aisle, Ronald Reagan, it actually has helped us to generate bipartisan support for this program in Congress. And it's one of the reasons that we still have LIHEAP 43 years later, to rely on for energy assistance. So LIHEAP, a block grant, that means that it is a grant that goes from the federal government. The United States Department of Health and Human Services administers the program at the federal level, and then they run a formula on how much each state should get of that big federal pot of money that's appropriated by Congress each year. That money gets shot out to states, and then states either administer it directly or give it to subgrantees. You might be familiar with community action agencies, for example, in your area, or local departments of health and human services. Those folks directly administer the program at the grassroots level. So they will do things like when a household comes in and says, I can't pay my bill, they're the ones who are running eligibility checks to see if this is an eligible household and if they're meeting all the requirements of the federal government in order to get this help with their assistance bill. Then they pay the utility directly. So you all will get payments on behalf of your customers from states and or subgrantees as a result of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. So as you can imagine, that's a huge benefit to utilities who are struggling, I think, with, especially in current times, inflation being what it is, and when rates are increasing, with this sect of their customer segment who cannot pay their bill. And how do, it's not your job to be a nonprofit or a social services agency. It's not what's natural for you all. So the fact that organizations like JEA do have an Elizabeth Paulson that is dedicated to figuring out solutions for those customers is incredible. Not every utility has that, but every utility and your customers have access to the LIHEAP funds that can help support customers during times of crisis. So just a couple of other facts. It's administered by a specific division of the Health and Human Services. It's a big federal organization, the Administration for Children and Families, Office of Community Services. That's where the funding is regulated. That's where the block grants are regulated, and it helps people pay for and makes energy more affordable in a multitude of ways, which we'll get into later in the in our presentation. Helps them to make energy more affordable. Detailed history. I'm not going to go into all of this, but I'd just like you to know that even though LIHEAP was initiated in its current form in 1981, the impetus for that took a while. So the year I was born, 1973, that's when this all kicked off. There was this OPEC oil embargo. Probably not something many of you have studied in history class, but it made a huge impact on the economy of the United States. And there was suddenly the cost of gasoline and fuel went skyrocketed, and everyday families were really struggling to pay the bill. And the need for this program arose out of that OPEC oil embargo that sent prices so sky high in the mid to late 1970s. And as a result, these other things, it triggered actions at the local level, and then at the federal, state level in the state of Maine, and then at the federal level to create this program. The one important part that I also want you to know is that while we were created in 1981, in 1984, the program underwent a key change. So when it was first initiated in 1979 as direct bill assistance, it was only for heating costs. And then in 1984, Congress acted and changed the program and expanded it to include cooling assistance. Also, that formula that I talked about that determines how much funds each state gets, suddenly, instead of using the same statistics year after year, in 1984, they decided, hey, we need to look at what's currently happening in a state, not what's happened in the past. So instead of looking at 1981's census over and over and over again in perpetuity, we're going to look at the most recent information on climate and eligibility in order to determine how much each state gets. So those of you who've been around the block for a while have probably heard terms like old formula and new formula. I just want to point out that the new formula was born in 1984. So it's not that new. It's been around for a long time. And then Congress plays with this and the appropriations each year. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment as well.
So Katrina, I'm in Florida. It's hot here. I'm thinking baby formula, Formula One, racing cars. Tell me more about formula. What exactly are you talking about?
What is this formula that we speak of? Alas, not baby formula, not formula racing. In fact, this is the formula that the federal government uses. And to get into a little more detail about how these funds are appropriated, every year Congress decides how much funds are available for LIHEAP to help pay bills and to help weatherize homes and to help make energy affordable. That big total is then distributed to states and then distributed to subgrantees like we talked about earlier. But the formula determines how much is available, how many resources are available in your state. And so it refers to the method of determining grantee allocations of those federal LIHEAP dollars. That means that the formula directly affects the number of dollars that are available to help your customers with their energy bills, weatherization, crisis, all of those things. Grantees do not just include all 50 states, but also tribes are included as grantees and territories. So like Puerto Rico, Mariana Islands, the territories are also included. Those are direct grantees of LIHEAP funds and also receive a portion of these funds to help their folks. And we talked about old and new being used to describe a formula that is still basically more than 40 years old. The factors that influence the formula. So what is it that determines how much your state gets? And then from there, how much is available to your individual utility customers for assistance? The language is very specific. It uses the total, well, actually it's on the next screen. I'm gonna go backwards in order, I think, because I wanna talk about this first, the 1984 formula that required updated data. But by state, the things that they look at are residential energy consumption, so how much energy people are using in that state, the temperature variations and climate. So Elizabeth said that she's from Florida. It's really hot there. We're now taking that into context. And the number of heating degree days and the number of cooling degree days. So the number of days on average that a household needs to turn on their air conditioning in order to stay comfortable. The number of days that a family needs to turn on their heat in order to stay comfortable. Those numbers of days vary depending on your climate and where you live. In Florida, you might not need your heat very much, but you need your air conditioning a lot. So it looks at the number of days that people need to use those for their individual households, how much they use, and then how many people are eligible. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about the formula. But from there, Congress can tweak. So every year when they appropriate these dollars for LIHEAP, and they say $4 billion, let's say, is available for LIHEAP, they can add language in that appropriations bill statute that changes the way these funds are distributed. So for example, here's some very specific, weedy for my policy folks, if there's anyone who's interested in or active on federal affairs at your utility, this is the type of language that they're watching closely on behalf of your utility to see what's coming your way and how this formula is being tweaked by our policymakers in order to ensure that funds are available. So for example, if there were $4 billion, a little over $4 billion, they might add language that says something like this. Provided that all but 785 million of the amount appropriated shall be allocated as though the total appropriation for such payments for 22 was less than 1.975. That sounds like a lot of hooey. Like, what are they talking about? What this is referring to is old and new formula. This language is included in appropriations every year. And basically what it says is this much of the money that we're appropriating will be appropriated as if it were still 1981. And the census from 1981 was still in effect. So in the language that you see on the screen, all of the funding except 785 million of it is being appropriated according to 1981 data. The only part that's being appropriated according to the most recent data is that remaining 785 million. So this is why a formula is important. It sends funding primarily, one of the effects of this is that it sends funding to heating states rather than cooling states. And so if you are noticing inequities in how much southern utilities have available or southern states have available, this is part of the reason why, is because it was founded as primarily a heating program, and it retains part of that identity to this day because of political support and other reasons. The funding comes out in November and heating season comes first. So a lot of times they gobble up the resources and there's nothing left for cooling in states where you need both. It's just one of the ways that the program runs. So I know that there might be questions at the end and I'm happy to answer them. The formula is a very complex topic. So boiling it down to a few simple sentences, I could do an entire hour on just formula and still only crack like the very surface of it. But I wanted to at least address some of the most common questions that I get asked about formula and how it works and why all the money goes to heating and why are we not getting enough for cooling. I will also point out that the climate is changing. I mean, I hope that's not a controversial statement to make. I don't know where you live, but I just visited my daughter in Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest. She lives in a 3-story townhouse she shares with 3 other roommates. And she sent me a picture. It was 96 degrees in their bedroom on the 3rd floor a couple of weeks ago. They have a heat dome park there. It's just not typical for the Pacific Northwest to have access to any cooling equipment. Apartments don't have air conditioners or HVAC for cooling because they typically don't need it. But now suddenly for the past, 10 years, incrementally, it's been creeping up. And so now it's a real drive to add cooling to places where we've never needed it before. So regardless of what your thoughts are about that topic, the repercussions of a warming climate are real to people who are in need, and they have to deal with them. So we're forced to deal with the repercussions of that, even if politically it's a divisive thing to say that there's a changing climate. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. Let's skip over this one that we already talked about. So I thought maybe you might wonder how much of the percentage, so if 100% is the total LIHEAP that's available, what did your state get? What percent of that did your state get? And so those are up here on the board from the highest percentage to the lowest percentage based on those formula parameters that we discussed earlier. New York is at the top with almost 10% of the federal LIHEAP funding going to the state of New York, and down at the bottom is Hawaii. I don't feel that sorry for them. They are in Hawaii after all, but they're towards the bottom in the state allocations formula. And again, number of eligible persons and climate and consumption, all of those are the things that are going into determining what these formulas are. There are some historical events that shaped energy assistance. So tying back to that, like this was created as a heating program and retains part of that identity. There was a blizzard in 1978. So you can imagine if we have an oil embargo in the mid to late 70s, everything is really, really high. And then we get hit with a huge blizzard. Can you imagine what that was like? And some of you, I mean, my generation, Gen X, for a lot of us, the 1978 blizzard is our earliest memory. Like that's the first thing that we remember because it was huge. Like the snow came all the way up, halfway up our doors. We couldn't get out. People were shut in. It was really terrible timing for a great blizzard to happen when prices were so high. And it's part of the reason that LIHEAP was created. But that blizzard and those deaths that occurred during that blizzard inside people's homes, it created a reaction that implemented change in our country. A lot of times we do tend to be reactive rather than proactive from a policy perspective. Something terrible has to happen in order for a need to rise to the top and to get the attention of Congress, and something new is done. That was LIHEAP in this case. The 79 Maine snowstorm was the reason why Maine created a program, and that program served as the foundation for LIHEAP. So you can imagine what the climate is like in Maine. It is not the same as Florida, where Elizabeth lives. And so this was a program that was it originated in a cold weather state and then was taken and made into a federal program, and it's still, again, that identity of cold weather. However, in summer of 1980, there was a huge heat wave in Missouri, and fuel funds across the country actually were initiated as a result of this. So there are all these converging things happening sociopolitically that created a need, and this energy affordability rose to the top in the late 70s, early 80s, and that's when all of this political pressure and movement started happening to help people have access to energy. We had a conference. We have a conference every year at NUAC. This last year it was in Chicago, and there's a documentary called Cooked: Survival by Zip Code. We played it at our conference this last year. I'm going to highlight it here because it talks about a more recent heat wave in 1995, the Chicago heat wave. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but a lot of folks weren't until they saw this documentary. More than 700 people died in that heat wave in Chicago, and it started to highlight. So now these are the things that have pushed us towards this need for cooling assistance. These types of events, when they happen, that's what creates social change in our country. Elizabeth might have a question for me.
So, Katrina, what's LIHEAP going to do about all of these issues? I saw that movie Cooked. It freaked me out, and it's hot here. It's also cold in the winter, okay?
Yep.
What are we going to do?
Yep. So we have this one, it feels like a behemoth. When I say $4 billion, that sounds like a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of resources to serve every needy household in the country. So we have got our work cut out for us as practitioners and as people who are, who care about these customers. LIHEAP can be used in a couple of different ways to make things better for people. You can conduct outreach. So you can go out and find people who need help with this money. You can provide direct bill assistance to eligible households. You can pay their bills with this money. And if they're in a crisis, so for example, if they're disconnected or they're in threat of disconnect, you can help them remain connected with these funds. So all of those are eligible ways that you can spend the LIHEAP in order to make lives better and support your customers. You can also do a small amount of weatherization. So 15% of the funds from LIHEAP can be transferred over to make homes more efficient, so that next year, perhaps, they need less of a benefit to pay their bill. So if we keep their bills low, then the amount of LIHEAP that we need for bill assistance the next year is less, and it extends the grant so that we can help another family then. So for that reason, we do some limited weatherization with LIHEAP. Up to 25% of LIHEAP can actually be transferred over to do weatherization if you get a waiver in your state plan from HHS. So anywhere from 15 to 25%. Some states do not opt to use any of the money for weatherization. Others will use 5%. So it's a block grant, and there's a lot of flexibility. Each state determines what their needs are as far as weatherization goes, and then determines what role LIHEAP plays in that. Disaster relief. So in the event that you have, I got Elizabeth talking to me today, there's hurricanes down your way. So let's say a hurricane hits and people lose their entire HVAC systems in their homes and they need to replace them. LIHEAP can be used in disaster situations for things like temporary shelter, cooling centers to help replace HVAC equipment in homes. These are all allowable uses of LIHEAP and ways that we can help in times of those big disasters when needed. And then the last thing that we can use it for is to actually administer the program. So to run a program of this size, as you can imagine, it takes a lot of warm, caring, supportive, talented people, and we pay them with 10% of our funds. So that's where that funding goes to administer the program at the federal, state, and local levels. What does the program look like today? I pulled some statistics for you just to give you an idea of how many people are served by LIHEAP in a year and what kind of support we're looking at. So in FY23, which is the most recent data we have available, fiscal year 2023, Almost 6 million households were served with LIHEAP assistance. So we had around $4 billion and we served around 6 million people with it. Grantees provided an estimated heating assistance to 5 million households. So out of those, 5 million were for heating, only just under 1 million were for cooling. So you can see the size difference between the heating program and the cooling program across the country when we look at number of households that were served. Residential weatherization, 60,818 houses that we weatherized across the country. Yes, I know, I see you shaking your head. I think we can do far better than that. And then crisis. So crisis could be winter or year-round crisis. This is like you're in jeopardy of disconnect. 1.4 million households in winter or year-round were served, and summer crisis specifically for access to cooling, 157,976. So again, this gives you an idea. Yeah,
It
go ahead.
sounds so good. It sounds so good. But is there anything that is not allowed with LIHEAP? Can you give us, I mean, there's got to be a catch here.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time talking about what you can do with LIHEAP. But it's probably important to have at least one slide on what you cannot do because you don't want to get in any trouble. These are enormously beneficial programs, and fraud, abuse, and waste is at top of mind anytime we're spending valuable, precious taxpayer dollars to help other people. The last thing we want to do is misspend any of our funding or get into any trouble with the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. We always want to remain within the parameters that Congress has set for us and do what we're supposed to do and be fiscally responsible with these funds. We're grateful that any program like this exists to help people, and we wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize it. To that end, these are some things that you can't do with LIHEAP. You can't give LIHEAP directly to a utility. I get asked this question a lot. Why do they go through this whole rigmarole of sending it to states and nonprofits and then people coming in and eligibility? Why don't they just give money to utilities to get rid of arrearages? Well, that's not the way the program was designed, and for a really important reason. For several really important reasons, but maybe I'll start with the most important is from a policy perspective, a utility is a for-profit company. And so bailing out for-profit companies is not typically what government is tasked with doing. Government is supposed to protect the most vulnerable amongst us, not those who are for-profit corporations. This was a program that was designed to protect health and safety for disabled folks, for veterans, for young children, mothers, single mothers who have little kids in the house. These are who we're protecting, not big utility corporations. And the perception would be that it's corporate welfare if we were to give it directly to utilities. And there would immediately be it jeopardizes the funds if it's benefiting utilities, but we're not shown a direct benefit to families. Then who are we valuing as a society and who are we helping? There would be, for example, if you gave it directly to a utility, how would you prove that that utility actually reduced arrearages for people who are like the folks that I just talked about, for those vulnerable eligible households? So eligibility becomes a really key piece, that we're using the dollars to help those who are most vulnerable to temperature extremes in the home. And the only way that we can prove that we're doing that is by determining eligibility, looking at household income, looking at household makeup, ensuring that a nonprofit that is completely outside third party, has nothing to do with the utility, is taking a look at that. Utilities aren't making those determinations on their own. So this is why that partnership is so important. It's really to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible and that we're using the funds as they were meant to be used. You can't change the administrative or the other cost caps. So I said you could use 15 to 25% of your funds for weatherization. That means you can't use 26%. Not 26, 15 to 20, 0 really to 25% is okay. And within the parameters of the grant, but you can't do any more than that. That's the limitation. There's a barrier or a fence around that. You can't exceed the stated eligibility criteria. So if someone is $5 over the income eligibility, you can't serve them. That's not allowable. And it's frustrating, let me tell you. And I actually, on a later slide, have some ways that we can be creative with that and make it work. But if they are ineligible, we may not serve them. That's just, it's a hard rule, hard and fast rule. You can't violate your own state rules. So in some cases, like people say, use whatever your state rule is for this particular issue, and you can't violate those state rules. So for example, if your state says you need to give 30 days comment period in a public hearing, You have to give 30 days for LIHEAP too then. You can't give 15 days to LIHEAP and 30 days to all your other programs. It has to be equivalent to what your state requires. You can't pay water or sewer bills. This is an energy program, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. This is particularly difficult in situations where there are bundled bills and water and electric and gas are all bundled on the same bill, and making sure that we separate it out and we pay attention. We're only paying the portion of that that is for energy. There is a separate federal program for water that's fighting for its life right now, by the way. Again, a whole nother webinar, but not with LIHEAP. You can't pay water and sewer bills with LIHEAP. And you can't make it, we call this the no granite countertops rule. If you're weatherizing a home, what you're allowed to do in that home are repairs and installation that would benefit them from an energy perspective. You can't remodel the kitchen and put in granite countertops. You can't replace an entire roof, even if they need it. It's not directly related to energy affordability tightly enough for us to have those allowable costs. So we build some parameters around what you're able to do in those situations. No gold toilets, no granite countertops. Sorry, guys. And also, I keep asking and I keep getting turned down. You can't buy a pink elephant. I really want one. Alas, HHS says no, no pink elephants.
Thank goodness they said no to you.
I really want that pink elephant. I'll put a big LIHEAP sign, call it marketing. Program design flexibilities. So those are that's what we can't change. Where can we play? Where can we get creative? What can we do with these dollars that might help us to support people or expand, or things that are outside the box that maybe we didn't think about? It's always good to know what your state does with their LIHEAP funds. So if you haven't connected with your state director and you don't know what these rules are for your state, first find out that. And then I'm going to layer on top of that what we have on this slide, which is, okay, so this is, if you know what you're currently doing, here's some ways that you might be able to be more flexible with that if you so choose. And there's reasons why you would want to be flexible and reasons why you wouldn't. That probably requires an example. So 2 years ago, we had $8.5 billion for the program. That was about double what we would normally have in a year. Post-pandemic relief, supplemental funding came through. In situations where you have massive amount of resources like that, you may want to open the gates of eligibility and allow more people to apply for services because you have more funds that you can spend to help them. This year, we're at $4 billion, so we're half what we were a couple of years ago. In situations like that, if we've increased eligibility, now we might close that gate. We might make a new barrier and say, there's no point in getting a stack of applications for people that we cannot serve because we will run out of money. So you might reduce eligibility so that you're serving those most in need first. And so your eligibility requirements might change based on resources available from year to year. Just that's one of the ways that things change at the flexibilities in LIHEAP. The types of benefits that you offer are entirely up to you and the partners in that state. So whether you have a heating program and a cooling program, you run a year-round program, you just do one or the other, and the extent to which you'll pay bills or offer weatherization is all up to you. That's all part of program design at the state level. It's the beauty of a block grant is that you can look at what your specific needs are in your state and address those with LIHEAP. The amount of benefit and other factors influencing benefit. So whether you do a bigger bill payment assistance to fewer people or a smaller bill payment assistance, but you touch more households. So do you give $1,000 to 500 households, or do you give $500 to 1,000 households? Do you see the difference there? These are decisions that are made, yeah, and it's a tough, I don't envy state directors and partners who have to make these really critical decisions because there's not enough resources to serve everyone. We serve around 1 in every 6 eligible households with this funding. So that means 5 out of 6 households are left on the cutting room floor. And we're making really daily critical decisions that affect people's lives and kitchen budgets when we make these decisions. So I really encourage you to be thoughtful and to look at what in your state influences whether you want to do, are there other programs, are there ratepayer funds that are available to where you can do a smaller benefit that's then supplemented by other funds? Like what exists in your specific state that influences this decision? Primary and secondary fuel types. Do you give a benefit just to the primary fuel type? So if you're a natural gas heating home, does only natural gas get a benefit, or will you also provide a benefit for electric bills? This is something that you have to decide as a stakeholder group about LIHEAP. And it goes into the state plan every year, and you tell the federal government, this is what we're going to do. How to address the highest energy burdens with proportional benefits. So this one's a little more weedy, but it's important for you to know because sometimes you hear from customers after a post-LIHEAP benefit, and it might be helpful for you to know how to answer this question. So one person on one side of the street gets $750 for their electric bill, and they talk to their neighbor across the street, and their neighbor got $1,000. Well, why did they get $1,000? I got $750. It is because part of the reason that we do this program, part of the goals of this program is to help people proportionately. So maybe your neighbor across the street has less income or more people in their household, and we make the benefit, we size it depending on your energy burden, and we try to offer more to those with a higher burden and less to those with a less burden. Yes, so that's why. I'm sorry, I thought someone was asking a question, but yes, that's why we do it that way.
Equity. It's about equity. That's what I was saying. Very good.
Correct.
Keep going.
That's exactly right, Elizabeth. Equity is the right word here. And then the start and end dates. So the dates that you start offering benefits, if you open on November 1st or you open on December 1st or whether you run year round, that's up to you as well. There is one requirement that you have to offer crisis at least through March 15th. And then after that, it's up to you.
Well, so it sounds pretty good. Now, here's the thing. Where do I sign up, or where do I get the customers in need to sign up? I know who needs it. There's scads of them.
Yes, you are correct. And so this is a great program, and it would be wonderful if we could serve 100% of everybody who is struggling to pay their bills, but because of limited resources, we cannot. So the flexibilities, what are the fences? Where have we drawn those boundaries? It's 150% of the federal poverty level, which I understand will probably mean nothing to the people on this call. So I've given you a link if you want to look at where that's at. It's around, I don't know, these days it's probably around 50 grand for a family of 4. Or 60% of state median income. And this is the higher standard typically. So you can make a little bit more and qualify under this part of the standard. And the majority of grantees use the standard for that very reason. It maximizes the number of people that you can help. And so I've given a link to where you can see what those numbers look like. You can't set the bar lower than 110% of the federal poverty level. That's getting really, really low, really far down there. But anywhere from 110 to 150 or 60% is fair game. And you decide as a state where that parameter, what that line is for what makes the most sense. We talked that most grantees use 60% of SMI. Why do you think this is? I kind of just gave you the answer. It's because it maximizes the number of people who can be determined eligible. Some go lower than 150%. Why would they do that? And really the answer is because they have very limited resources. They want to ensure that the highest burdens are served first. And if you have a lower income, then your energy burden is higher. So it's more burdensome for you. Let's see if I can give you a good example. If you're making $10,000 a year and your bill's $100, or you're making $50,000 a year and your bill's $100, the bill stays the same, but your burden is higher if you're making less income. So that's why it's harder for you to pay $100 if you're only making $10,000 a year. So that's why some will go lower than 150%. And then this is kind of key too. One of the interesting things about the program, and what would be interesting, your homework question, should you choose to accept this mission, go and ask what counts as income in your state and find out. Does alimony count? Do lottery winnings, if you hit a lottery ticket, are they counting that as income for eligibility in LIHEAP? What about assets? Is there an asset test in your state? What if you own a Mercedes? What if you have a big house? What if it's paid off? What if you have a camper or a boat? Do any of those things, will those exclude you from being able to receive LIHEAP because they will count as income, or could they exclude you? Work study, let's say you're a college student and you're getting paid work study. Does that count as income, or can you exclude that? Social Security, any number of things. So I thought maybe When in doubt, you can always look at your state plan, and I have a link to these in my presentation that I know is shared, I think, in the handouts here. But cash gifts, if your mom gives you $1,000 to help you with your expenses, do you have to include that on your state plan? If this box is checked, then yes, that counts as income, and it would be used to determine eligibility. Savings account balances, one-time lump sum payments, jury duty, rental, work study, alimony, child support, dividends, interest, royalties on accounts, commissions, and then like unemployment, employment. So any of these are things that you would have to determine as a state whether you count it or not. We've got a poll for you today, and Lisa's going to help me launch this. I'm curious what you think. So in the poll, true or false, child support, let's talk about child support specifically for a moment, is counted as income for the purposes of determining LIHEAP eligibility. True or false?
I think you might have already given them a little clue in the last slide. See if they're paying attention.
This is an interesting one. There's stuff to learn about how this is counted. So we're going to leave that open for just a moment while you all respond.
We had about 85% response. So you may close it out, let you see what.
Yeah, let's go ahead and close it and see what they say. So what did our group say, Lisa? I can't see the results. Somebody's going to have to help me out.
It's not showing it. Let's see. Share. Okay, got it. There you go.
I still can't see it. I'm sorry. It might be because I have my presentation up. Will someone tell me what the results are?
81% have said that it's true, and 19% have said it's false.
Well, the truth is that either of those answers could be right based on your state and how you count child support. So the question that has to be determined with child support is whether it counts as income for the person who pays it, the person who receives it, both, or neither. So there are options when it comes to child support. And when I worked in LIHEAP at the local level at a community action agency, I cut my teeth at community action. We administered a LIHEAP program and a weatherization program as part of our organization. And I remember when I was learning how to do intake for the first time, I was surprised that the person who pays child support, the parent who has to pay it, it counted as income for them, but not for the parent who is receiving it. And I said, well, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem fair that the person who's ultimately receiving that income, it doesn't count towards income on their side, and the person who's paying it out has to count it. Like, that seems backwards. Why do we do it that way? And in our state, the reasoning for that was child support's like any other bill. You can't deduct your car payment, for example, from your overall household income. So if a parent is earning that money, it counts as income for that person, and we treat child support kind of like a bill that you pay. You don't deduct any of the other bills. And then we don't want to count it twice, so it doesn't count for the person who receives it. So that was the reasoning in our state. Other states do it differently. And how it's done in your state is entirely up to you all as stakeholders. In collaboration with your state LIHEAP office, the local providers, you make these decisions and decide how to count child support. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so if I get SSI, am I eligible?
Ooh, good question. So categorical eligibility for LIHEAP. There are a couple of programs. I get asked this all the time. Like, so why do we go through all of these, make people jump through all of these bureaucratic hoops and all this red tape to qualify when there's this thing called categorical eligibility? And if you receive TANF, which is temporary aid to needy families, that's like cash assistance that people get every month, SNAP, which is food assistance, supplemental security, SSI, like Elizabeth said, or some veterans programs, you're automatically eligible for LIHEAP. Can that help us to avoid some of the red tape? I wish the answer to that was yes, unfortunately.
So Katrina, what's your best advice then for helping people access these benefits? What do you recommend? What should we do?
Yeah, we're getting down to the wire for this presentation. I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to roll through these slides really quickly. But basically, the amount of time that you include for eligibility is important. So whether you look back 30 days, 60 days, 90 days can make someone eligible or not eligible. That's one of the flexibilities in the program, and it's really worth considering. That's my best tip. So my best advice for figuring this out is to look at how long you're offering eligibility. Our next poll is who conducts verification of household eligibility? I'm going to have Lisa launch that really fast, and we're going to answer super fast and then go over those answers. And Lisa, as soon as you see that we're at about half of the people. Yep, here we
There's
go.
the poll. There's the poll.
Everybody quickly answer, and we're gonna figure out who does this. All right, I think that's enough time. Lisa, let's close it and tell them the answer. So what you guys thought was
State or county governments looks like got 50 some. I can't see everything. Let me check. Kermit the Frog didn't get any, unfortunately. County governments got a tiny bit. Community action agencies are right behind state or county governments, and utilities got like just a bit.
Yep. So many of you probably answered this question based on how LIHEAP is administered in your state. In some cases, it's the state or the county agencies that determine eligibility. In others, it's community action, but it is never utilities. So while you might be running those eligibilities for your own programs, you are not able to run it for LIHEAP. Only our local subgrantees and grantees can do that. So all the answers were correct except for utility.
So then what is my role in all of this as a utility?
Your
Katrina,
role.
what do you got?
I think the most important thing that you can do is be supportive of the local agencies that are administering this program and know their names. So learn more, make connections to the people who administer LIHEAP in your area. You should know their name. They should know your name. You should have one another's contact information, and you should feel welcome to communicate with them about any issues from a utility perspective that you have. But if there's one piece of advice I could give and one thing that you can help with, it's just know who they are. And the joke in our industry is utilities sometimes bring the donuts. I distinctly remember the first day of crisis season, we had a line of people around the block at our community action agency waiting for help, and utilities brought coffee and donuts for those waiting in line. And it was just so appreciated. It's such a small gesture, but bringing the donuts is actually really helpful. So to the extent that you can be a supportive partner and show that you care about your community, that's all we ask.
Well, and guess what? Tuesdays at Panera, you get a discount. So pick up bagels and bring them.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Katrina, if my math is right, LIHEAP has been around for 43 years. What does the future of LIHEAP look like?
Again, I could do a whole nother presentation on this, and maybe we should, but the face of LIHEAP is changing because the energy matrix in our country is changing. There are things like community solar that are asking for help from LIHEAP. Electrification is making an impact on bills. Water assistance wants additional funding. The program needs reauthorized. It hasn't been reauthorized in years. We're actually not an authorized program, which is a political jeopardy. The formula, obviously, that we described earlier, how to make it most fair and equitable is a conversation that we're having. Cooling assistance expansion. I know we're all sitting here in late July, early August thinking, wow, we really need cooling assistance, weatherization. All of these are things that are impacting the program. And NUAC, by the way, is where these conversations are happening. So if you want to be part of the future of the program and help shape that future in the way that it should be, I think you should get involved with NUAC and help us bring your expertise and your thoughts to the table.
And so, hey, I wanted to tag in on there, so it wasn't represented on the screen, was that if you have questions about how tribal governments work with this program also, contact Katrina. She'll give you her email information a little bit later on in the presentation so that you get that really incredible information as well.
So resource pages, and now I'm going to open it up for question and answers. I know we've only got about 10 minutes left. We'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can.
And I did notice that the slides for all of the resources weren't showing on there. So I have some really good seed questions here, though. Let me just ask you really quick. What's going to happen in November? And how does the election affect LIHEAP?
Oh, it's above my pay grade. What's going to happen in November? I have no idea. Does anybody really know? However, what we do know is that no matter what happens, no matter who's in power in the administration, whether our president is Democrat or Republican, we have a duty to educate them on the impact of LIHEAP and why it's important, regardless of party. So we don't really care. We're very independent at NUAC. We don't care who's in office. Whoever it is needs our help to do their job right. So we're going to go in there and help members of Congress who determine the budget, our administration. We're going to make sure that they know who we are, what we do, why we do it, why it's important, what LIHEAP stands for, what is that acronym, so that they don't, if you don't know what a program is all about, it's very easy to cut a program. It's very hard to cut off a person. So we try to put a face on this program and ensure that they know how people are served in their country by this program and why it's important. So that's what's coming up. And it'll be a big year for us in LIHEAP and making sure that that advocacy happens.
Somebody asked a really good question here. They said, is it really possible for our local congressional representatives to, when we talk to them, to really have them make a difference? Does it even matter? And then what is LIHEAP Action Day? I think that's something that happens in March.
It is. You're right. So can your local congressperson make a difference? Yes, for better or worse, which is why it's important that your utility, for example, your federal affairs teams, and you as a customer service representative make sure that they're informed with stories from the field so that we can make sure that they have the information to do their jobs well. If they don't know what LIHEAP is, and or someone comes in and complains, like, why are we funding this program? We're in jeopardy if they don't know who we are and what we do and why it's important. So yes, they can make one sweep of a pen stroke can make tremendous change to a program, and that's critical. It's critical that they know what we do. LIHEAP Action Day is in March of next year. It's sponsored by NUAC, and it's a day when we fly into DC and we educate everyone, and then we send them out to the Hill with talking points on LIHEAP so that you have an opportunity at least once a year to meet in person with your members of Congress to talk about how your utility benefits from LIHEAP and your customer base and how important it is. So we are firmly entrenched in advocacy and education at NUAC.
So before I go to Congress and speak with them, is there a place where I can see what's gone on in, our local agencies, how much money has been processed by LIHEAP, through LIHEAP?
Yep, there sure is. And it's in the resources on the slide deck that I just gave you. There's a data warehouse where you can go and click on your state and see how much funding was allocated and how much has been spent. But you might want something more specific. So if your utility is not currently tracking how many payments have been made to your customers via LIHEAP, I strongly encourage you to start tracking that, because when you see that number start to add up, it makes a big difference for your leadership, for example. Like money will really sway them. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this many hundreds of thousands of dollars is offsetting expenses for our utility by helping our customers. This is really important to us. So it helps build a case of how many people and the extent to that this program is helping. I really want you to, if there's one thing you could do to help us, it would be track that data at the utility level.
So Katrina, this one's going to stump you. This question came in. This one just came in. Get ready.
Okay.
Thank you. What is the largest challenge this year coming into the next funding year? And please don't fall off your chair. Go ahead. Tell us.
So many challenges this year. I think the most existential threat to the program right now is change. So the president does not determine the budget for LIHEAP, Congress does. Every seat in the House of Representatives is up for election this year, including all of the offices that have championed the program thus far, along with about half of the Senate seats. That kind of turnover in Congress that determines they hold the purse strings for the program is huge. So I think the biggest challenge we're going to have is making sure that every time someone changes, that we have a new staffer, a new member of Congress getting in there with that office. That's why we mobilize our network to help us do that. I could not do that. I can't visit them all myself. And honestly, it's not as impactful to hear from me at the federal level about what's happening in Florida as it is for Elizabeth to go talk to her people in Florida and tell them what's happening in Florida. So mobilizing.
Connect with their legislative aides are the key to the life there too. If you want to send them boiled peanuts from Florida afterwards, it really does make a difference. Just saying, you want to get to know, you're building friendships. We're bringing donuts to the Community Action Agency, and we're making sure our congressional representative knows we appreciate them and we know what they're doing. I am so grateful Lisa, are you there? Because I think that Katrina's all talked out, but she's got so much more to share.
Yeah, and we have so many other questions. So attendees, thank you for all of them. We will partner together with, I will partner with Elizabeth and Katrina, and we'll see what additional questions may have not been, able to be aired today. I hope you all are able to download the PDF of today's slides that include everything that Katrina wasn't quite necessary because of time constraints to address specifically. It's there. You have our contact information. And if you don't feel like your question was answered, let me know, because like I said, we'll do that piece too. And I'm really happy. Oh my gosh, so happy that we were here today, because this is a really important issue. I mean, it's just something that you just can't overlook. So I'm so happy that we have these two spectacular ladies with us. So I want to say thank you, Katrina. You're always such a well of information, and I know you follow this topic so very deeply. And Elizabeth, I know you are passionate. Oh my gosh, you are so passionate in helping folks. So I just want to close out this webinar to say that you can always, if you didn't get the information you're looking for, you want a little more, and you didn't capture Katrina's email address, or maybe even Elizabeth's, contact me and I'll put you in touch with everyone, and we'll backtrack through to some of these questions and make sure we address them. But I do want to move forward, because not many of our attendees maybe don't know that CS Week transitioned to a new branding. We are now Innovate Utility CX, short name IUCX. And so I want to encourage everyone here. So part of this conversation that came out today was a byproduct of the customer assistance deep dive session that was held just this past May. But as Katrina alluded to, a lot of these fundings and a lot of these programs, and when they are funded, are governed by when certain timeframes happen. So this is why we thought this is a very timely topic. And I'm so glad to have you here, ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate you. So I'm going to move forward to a little bit of things you can look forward to. I want you to save some dates. We have our IUCX deep dives, and we have a host of those, and customer assistance, or maybe customer advocacy, where we're kind of exploring that kind of transition, will be held May 6th and next year in Phoenix, and we are looking forward to that. You can jot down some save the dates too for our IUCX conference for those dates. I hope you do, and I hope we see you soon. And then, and I want to give you some other upcoming deadlines in our offerings for IUCX. Our call for presentations for the workshop sessions is still open. It will be until August 22nd. I made a note of the link that will get you to that submission form. I hope you can capture it. And if you don't, you can reach me at lcollins@iucx.org. Lead Next will begin accepting nominations later this fall, like around October 1st. And then we will also launch the Expanding Excellence Awards program. So I'm hoping you're all considering those particular things that have happened to you in this year, and that you would want to share it with all your other peers at our conference. And then I want to say, I appreciate you all being here and enjoying this. And then, like I said, if you have any additional questions, please contact me. But other than that, lastly, I will say again, thank you for spending your time with us and our presenters on this important issue. And I believe we're going to close this webinar out. Sounds good. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.